Tá cinniú an rialtas an tailí colaiste dú faoi €1,000,000 cracailte. Fáil scanile atá ar bhicléin agus ar bhaintear ag gur brú sa bhreisearú fádas atá siad ag strahailt leis an gghearchéim costas maraltala. Minister, for months now we've listened to Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael tell us how you've got students back. Well, you have a very funny way of showing it. Firstly, you decide to hit students and their families with big rent increases. And now Fianna Fáil Minister for Higher Education, James Lawless, announces that the government is going to hike up student fees by €1,000 this September, a double whammy. You're now faced by a massive public backlash, and just like your madcap rents planned just a couple of weeks ago, you're now scrambling around looking for cover. It is total incompetence again from this government. The Fianna Fáil Minister couldn't have been clearer. Fees are going up by €1,000 in September. And this is just the latest from this government that is choosing to increase prices for folks in the middle of a cost of living crisis. In the last number of weeks, Minister, alone you chose to hike up the extortionate rents. You chose to hike up the price of petrol and diesel. You chose to hike up the price of home heating oil. You chose to hike up the prices of the local property tax. And nobody else did this. These were all government decisions. And now, as if families weren't hurting enough, as if they weren't being squeezed enough, you come along with this mad idea that to increase €1,000 to the bill of a family for sending their son or daughter to college. Minister, I need to ask you, do you simply not get it? Sending a kid to college is already costing families an arm and a length, and many of them are pushed to the pin of the collar just to do that. Hitting them with an extra €1,000 will make going to college impossible for many. And no wonder young people are leaving this country in their droves. This government is determined to mess things up for them in the here and now, right here at home, hell-bent in ensuring that this country is no country for young people. And this is all happening at a time of massive budgetary surplus of €8.5 billion. The state's never been wealthier, yet you come along with this mad idea about taking an extra €1,000 and hiking student fees by that amount. What we should be doing is scrapping them. What we should be doing is scrapping them not just for students but also for apprenticeships. We need to make education affordable, Minister. And that's what a government on the side of young people would do. Show them that they matter. Give them the hope that they can build a good future here in their own country. Aontas na Maclean in Éireann, they've called this right. The Students' Union of Ireland have called this absolutely right. They were spot on when they described your plan to jack up third-level fees by €1,000 as a calculated betrayal of students. And the public need clarity. Right across the state, parents are worried, students are worried about this here. Just last night we were contacted, as an example, by a father who's working every hour that God sends him to put his 3 children through college. He contacted one of the government TDs. He asked them a very simple question. In September, would he have to pay €3,000 per child for student fees for their child going to college, or €2,000? The government TD couldn't answer. No clarity whatsoever, no answer from it. And he doesn't have an extra €3,000. This is a family beside themselves with worry, with concern, and there are so many thousands others in the same situation. So, Minister, students and their families have had enough. They can't take any more. So I want you to be very, very clear. Put this issue to bed and give clarity to parents, to students out there. Tell us, when a student gets their bill for their fees in September, will that bill read €2,000 or €3,000? They demand clarity. You should give it here now.
Thank you, Deputy Doherty. Minister Chambers.
Thanks very much, Count Corla. And just to set out the backdrop to this in the context of the measures that the government has taken over the last number of years to make permanent and sustained reductions in the interventions that are affordable for many students. So if you look at the measures that have been taken, more students than ever are now benefiting from financial support through the SUSI grant scheme. 1 in 3 students paid no student contribution last year, which is over 44,000, whilst almost half of students were supported in some way through SUSI last year. Standard rate income thresholds are being increased by 15% from September, one of the largest increases to maintenance thresholds. Households with incomes up to €64,000 already do not pay a student contribution, and there are higher ceilings for families with multiple people attending college at the same time, or higher numbers for children. Maintenance grants have been fully restored for eligible postgraduate students, and SUSI fee support is now available for the first time ever for specified part-time, in-person or hybrid courses. And despite these measures and permanent changes that were made over a series of budgets, we recognise that many families are under pressure. And that's why, in the context of Budget 2026, Minister Lawless has said that in the context of moving away from one-off cost of living packages, he wants to see how we can deliver sustained, permanent costed changes to elements, for example, whether it's the student contribution fee, whether it's supports around maintenance, all of the variety of supports that are there for students that he wants to set out in the context of the envelope that will be made available. Minister Lawless will publish an options paper on the cost of education ahead of the budget, setting out the pathways to do this, and this will be negotiated in the normal way. And both Minister Donoghue and I approach Budget 2026 against a backdrop of a huge level of economic uncertainty. I didn't hear you reference that in your contribution. We're 1 week away from the July 9th tariff deadline. The Exchequer returns due to be published next week will give a point-in-time indication of the broader economic position that our country is in. But what we do know is that the global position is changing. The concentration risks around corporation tax and income tax are there, and that has to be reflected in a cautious and responsible approach to Budget 2026. And what the government is presently engaging in is two really important pieces of work. One, on the summer economic statement to set out the overall envelope for Budget 2026. And secondly, work on the National Development Plan, which I know Minister Lawless has significant ambition on, to drive continued support and capital investment in the third level sector in particular. So with all that major downside risks, we are trying to approach this in a cautious way. And we'll agree in the coming weeks an envelope that will be made available in terms of current expenditure changes and permanent increases in current expenditure across government. And it's within that context that I know Minister Lawless will be seeking to prioritise continued supports for students and for families, and to make permanent changes across a range of supports, whether that's targeted nature or indeed around the student contribution fee. And it's in the context of the budget negotiation process that we'll be able to set out the position for families in the aftermath of Budget 2026 and what will be possible. And you know, as everyone else in this House does, that that's the normal way that we engage in the budget process. We're not announcing measures or changes right now. We're engaging in the summer economic statement process and indeed agreeing a new national development plan to set out the broader economic context for 2026.
Thank you. Deputy Doherty.
Minister, I asked you for clarity. Does anybody have clarity in relation to the question I asked? No, the families are asking, are the fees going to be €3,000 come September or €2,000? You went on to say, this is the way that things are done. The Minister has made it very, very clear. He has said that fees are going back up. The fees are going up €1,000. He has said, if I don't have a cost of living package, I can't do these kind of measures that were done last year. And there's no point blaming Donald Trump's tariffs for what you're doing to students. Why are you attacking students? You've done this already with rent increases. They're going to get a double whammy. So, Minister, you do not understand or appreciate the strains that families are under. I gave you an example, but there's countless others, and they're bound to be in your own constituency. Parents with 2 and 3 children that are in college, that's €2,000 or €3,000 more that they have not budgeted in. And so can you give clarity now that the government's position is, when the fees letter land in September, that they will be increased by €1,000, that those fees will be charged at €3,000 per student? And what is needed, Minister, and this is the reason this is happening, is because you have turned your face against the cost of living package, because you think the cost of living crisis is over. We need a cost of living package, and fees need to be reduced, not increased.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister Chambers.
Well, I said you can't just dismiss the economic position that our country is in. We have to approach Budget 2026 with caution, and we know if you strip away the windfall nature of many of our tax receipts there's a potential risk around a deficit position within our economy, which we cannot ignore, and you should not ignore as a finance spokesperson for the main opposition party. And it's in that context in which we're working on the medium-term expenditure strategy and also working on what targeted, sustained supports we can bring and give to families to make public services more affordable, to support families when it comes to higher education, the cost of education more generally. And it's within that context that we're negotiating Budget 2026. And what I would say to families is that we'll agree an envelope that will be available for changes around taxation and current expenditure, and indeed the uplift we want to give capital in the economy. And that will form the basis of our discussion with all ministers on what changes we can make for Budget 2026.
Thank you,
and that's the
Minister.
normal part of the budgetary process that this government is committed to advancing.
Thank you, Minister. Deputy.
Like, share, and subscribe, and let us know your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.